Welcome back to the channel. I have a special video for you today. I have now been on YouTube for about 4 years, and I realize that very few people in my audience know what I do professionally. And I think it's important. I start every video by saying I'm a licensed psychologist, and I think people make the assumption, oh, well, he's a therapist. I am trained that way, but I do not work as a therapist. I am an organizational psychologist. I am a consultant. I am an executive coach. That's what I do for my actual job. And I want to sort of tell you that story. How did I go from being a therapist to an organizational consultant? I think it's important that you understand that because I think it will help frame how I think about pop psychology, why I run this YouTube channel. It just gives you more perspective, and I hope it's interesting to the audience. So I started off wanting to be a traditional therapist. I went to USC and I got a degree in marriage and family therapy out in California. And that program was exactly what I wanted it to be. It was a fantastic program. You know, when you're becoming a therapist, they throw you into the deep end with clinical work right off the bat. It's different than becoming like a physician. You know, because there's greater risk with becoming a physician or making a mistake as a physician, you get 2 years of academic work before you go into clinic. As a therapist, for me anyway, it was week 1, I was working in a clinic with a very severe population. And at the time, I loved it. I was like, this is exactly what I want to do. It's fascinating that I could make a real difference with people. I was a stabilizing force, I felt, with my clients. I loved it. And I did it for 2 years in a variety of clinics, and then I graduated. And traditionally, when you graduate, you have kind of a choice to make. Either you go on to go get a doctorate, or you go start a private practice, or you join a clinic, right? You either start your professional career or stay in academia. I didn't really have a good reason for going the route of staying in academia and getting a PhD, other than I think I was kind of scared about starting my own career. I didn't really know what I wanted. And I go, you know what? Every mentor I have has a PhD. That's what I'll do. And I think I was ambitious and I liked the idea that I was elevating in my career. So I went to the University of Denver and I had a really, really good experience. None of this is bad. Like I had a great experience at USC. I had a great experience at the University of Denver. But one thing I noticed while I was in training is everybody that was my clinical supervisor, they were overwhelmed, they were beleaguered, they had caseloads of 50, 60, 80 clients at times. You know, as a student, for me, it's a practicum, and I have a caseload of 20 people, and I thought that was a lot. But you're so excited about the field that you're able to be compassionate and empathetic with each person that comes in. But I was looking at my supervisors and going, man, they feel callous, they feel like they're unhappy, and it's because they're just being burned out in the machine. And I noticed that, I would tell you, my first practicum in my doc program, and I noticed it in every follow-on practicum. And so I started going, man, this is a lot of schooling to get burned out this way. And then I asked one of my supervisors, who was nationally known, how much money she made. And the number was shocking to me. But before we get to that part, I want to thank our sponsor for today's video, Aura. Aura has been a longtime sponsor of this channel, but now is a really important time to talk about their service because hackers may have stolen the social security numbers of every American. Over 2.9 billion records were stolen from national public data, which offers personal information to employees, private investigators, staffing agencies, and others doing background checks. These stolen records include name, address, phone number, date of birth, social security number, alternative names, and members of the hacker group have reportedly released the information online for free for anyone to view. It's outrageous to me. The idea that my information, my family's information could just be on the web, available for anyone to see is a nightmare. If you weren't taking steps to protect your information and that of your family, I think this is a wake-up call. I am so happy that I've used Aura for as long as I have because I know that my information is safe. Aura alerts me if they find my phone number, email, or social security number anywhere on the dark web. And they let me know if people try to use that information to access my bank accounts or credit. And further, they give me up to $5 million of identity theft insurance in case the worst case scenario happens. They also provide a bunch of other features to keep you safe online, all inside one app. And the good news is, because you are a member of the PopPsych YouTube audience, Aura is offering you a free 14-day trial. All you have to do is go to aura.com/PopPsych. I really can't recommend the service enough, especially with the data breach. I think you should check them out. Okay, back to the video. I feel like the work that psychologists do is, I'm biased, incredibly important. Incredibly important. But we, the people that are attracted to psychology, are not business people. And as a consequence, I think we way undervalue our work. We think that all we're doing is sitting there talking to somebody, so we can't charge that much for it because there's no tangible change that we're making. And so, yes, we will accept nothing. And this is just my sort of view on it, but you have a lot of people that are overworked, underpaid, and only because they are the best people, the most emotionally connected people, do they put up with it. And I just think it's a problem in the field. I think it's a problem with the APA, honestly. I'll yell about that in a second. But I was pretty early in my doc program getting disillusioned by the financial side of the business, and I was getting disillusioned by how much emotional damage can I take, right? And I think that I think I was a good therapist. Even as a practicum student, I think I was very good. I was not great, though, because to be a great therapist, you have to be willing to sit in somebody's emotion for as long as they need you to. You have to be willing to have the hardest, most uncomfortable conversation as long as your client needs you to. And you have to do it day after day after day with client after client after client. And if you don't have the emotional availability to be there with your clients, you can't be great at it. And I don't think I was great at it. So as I'm sort of thinking about my own style, and I'm going through different practicums, I worked at different community mental health centers. I worked at the State Employee Assistance Program. One of my supervisors both had a counseling program, which I was in, and he also led a coaching and consulting practice. And I said, can I try that? And he goes, yeah, you can. And I've told this story before on here, but I went from working with someone that had very severe OCD, debilitating OCD, the kind that you, as a clinician, all you're doing is trying to reduce anxiety. I worked with that person, and I was thinking, man, I no longer feel like I have the agency I did when I was a master's level clinician, when I thought I was changing the world. Now I feel like I'm really just helping this person go day to day. And I moved from that conversation to having my very first coaching client, and was a public defender that was trying to find a way to manage his professional life, make meaning of his work, and support, connect with his wife. And I go, that is so much a better fit for me. It's not as emotionally draining. I thought it was more interesting. And in the consulting world, the coaching world, the client is no longer the individual that you're seeing. Oftentimes, the client is the organization. And as a consequence of that, there is pressure to make change. And as a clinician, I love the fact that there is that pressure, because now we're using assessments at the start. We're using 360 to get better data about how somebody is performing. We're focused on performance, and there is a driver for me and my client to make this person improve in whatever areas have been identified. That extra pressure, I think, changes the tone of the interaction in a very positive way. Again, for me, somebody who I think is, from a clinical lens, could be criticized for over-intellectualizing things, right? I always wanted to go to, let's think about this problem versus let's sit in your emotion. And I think it made me not great as a therapist, but better as a coach. So at that point, I kind of recognized, I think this is what I want to do. Now, the challenge is, it's very difficult at that time. I'm maybe 27 or 28 going, how do I get into a world where I can be, where businesses are going to pay me to consult them? And so I was very intentional about trying to build a resume that I could sell. So originally I was studying for my dissertation, I was measuring meaning making and spirituality. The data is overwhelming that if you have faith, you overcome illnesses better. If you are a caregiver and you have faith, you overcome the trials of being a caregiver better than if you don't have faith. And I was really interested in, like, what's the mechanism behind that? Is it the locus of control? Is it the social support? Like, what does spirituality give you that's so curative? But I realized that that's I didn't realize this, my future advisor, a professor that I was talking to about this, told me, which is this meaning making and spirituality dynamic is fascinating, but no one's going to pay you for it. If you want a job with businesses, you have to do something that businesses want to hire you for. So I switched my advisor from a wonderful advisor to this new advisor who was also fantastic, and I moved my dissertation focus to corporate culture, and I made a tool to evaluate corporate safety culture. Safety culture because there was a lot of building in Denver, and I knew that construction companies would be hiring, and I could position myself as someone who was an expert in safety culture. So I was very deliberate about making that transition. And my last, I guess so it would be year 4 of my doc program, I started my own consulting company. It was called Colarossi Group. And with the Colarossi Group, I had, my plan was to have Colarossi Counseling and Colarossi Consulting. I started it early intentionally because I was trying to, I think this was 2010 or 2011, sort of show that I was working in this space for a while. And I was fortunate enough, because I had been doing the work in safety, to get some work with some large construction companies. And I maintained those construction companies as clients for the years to come. So I graduate from the academic side of my doc program, and then in psychology, you have they call it a Predoc Internship. It's a year-long internship where all you do is clinical work. So I did that at Colorado State University. I had, again, a wonderful experience, but I knew going into this program that I was not going to stay on the clinical path. I wanted to go to the organizational world. I told all my advisors, everybody was on board with that. And during that time, on the side, I was completing my dissertation and I was doing some consulting. So when I graduated, you're sort of at this fork in the road as a psychologist. And I would even say it's not really a fork in the road. There's a well-worn path which says, now you graduated with your PhD, congratulations. Now you need to get hours for licensure. No one's going to want to work with you if you don't have a license. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep you in this clinical world, and we're going to grossly underpay you because you're getting hours for licensure, or you can go on your own and you'll never get any work as a clinician. So to give you an idea, I'll tell you the numbers. My year working full-time as a pre-doc intern I made $25,000. That was a good salary at the time. I was carrying a caseload that was similar to that of all the psychologists that were working in the counseling center. And then you graduate, and then they go, hey, come back one more year and we're going to pay you an additional $5,000 for your experience. Now you have a PhD, you're working full-time, and we're going to pay you $30,000. And it's not like Colorado State paid less than anybody else. That was the going rate. Again, this is the start of my complaint about the APA. I feel like only psychologists would put up with that kind of ridiculous rate given the expertise. I just think every other industry, we would go, wait a second, I'm bringing value here. I'm having interactions that no one else is comfortable having. Pay me for it. But we don't. There's just not the money in the pipeline to support that. So you have a choice as a student to either go postdoc, which most people do, and they make very little money, and I feel like they are taken advantage of, or you go, you know what? I'm going to go on my own, and I'll figure it out and see how it goes. I'll get my own supervision and get licensed on my own. And so that's what I did. So I left on my own. I did not go to a postdoc, and I officially opened the doors of Colarossi Counseling and Colarossi Consulting. And it worked out. I sublet a little office in a fancy area in Denver that I could afford for a couple of days. I stacked all of my clients, my clinical clients, on those days. And And I made way more money than I would have had I gone the postdoc route. And I was able to pay for and find mentors that would give me the supervision required to get licensure. So I started doing that, and then at the same time, I was also doing Colarossi consulting, and I did it for about 6 months before I was able to go full-time with a consulting firm. I ended up running their leadership development program, which grew. Eventually, we acquired the Institute for Social and Emotional Intelligence. I became the executive director for that. I stayed there for, I think, 3 or 4 years before going out on my own again, and then eventually joining my current employer. And I'm light on talking about my current employer because I really want to separate YouTube from that world. But it begs the question, well, why are you doing YouTube? Two answers. The first is, during COVID, I had in my mind that we were not, all of a sudden, I'm a pretty social person. All of a sudden, I'm locked in the basement. And I was like, you know what? For my family and myself, I don't want to lose this time. Let's use this energy to do something. So each of us, my wife and 2 kids, we're going to pick one thing each month that we're going to learn. And my thing originally was editing. I want to learn how to edit videos so that I could send out videos to my clients reminding them that I'm still here. So I had like funny videos of, me wearing a suit and running on or riding on a Peloton and then saying, I'm still here working for you, give me a call. Like, that was the goal. So I did that, and at the same time, my wife Allison was really into Rachel and Dave Hollis, who I was not into, but she loved them and they got divorced, and she was upset. So I did a reaction video. That was the very first PSYCH video, and it did very well. And so I go, you know what? This is going to be my thing during COVID. And I just want to hold myself accountable for staying focused on this versus bouncing around, because I do have a tendency to bounce around to different things that I'm interested in. That's the first thing. It's just sort of can I force myself to be focused? And then the second is, if you notice in my tone as I'm talking about this, I have a beef with academia largely, and the APA also, because I think that in many ways we do a lot of things to academia, the APA does a lot of things to undervalue the psychologists, and I think in academia we do a lot to undervalue the views and perspectives of the average person. Like, we don't make things relatable. If I'm a researcher and I publish a study on spirituality and meaning making, like I wanted to, what I will do is I go, okay, well, for my career, I want to get tenure. I need to get this published in the best journal I can. So I'm going to send out this article to these fancy journals, and hopefully one says yes. And if they don't say yes, then I will send it to a less prestigious journal, and hopefully they take it. And if they don't, then so on and so forth. Where I don't take it is go put it in the New York Times. I don't go and put it on Substack. Very rare, right? I don't take my research and make it available to the average person. I put it in this really prestigious, elitist journal that no one's going to read. You know why no one will read it? Because it's super expensive to get there. If you go look up, like if you want to go look up any article, what you'll find is it's behind a paywall that is $500 or $600 to join a search engine that gets you access to academic journals. I hate the fact that there is all of this red tape and there's this difference between the academic and the person that wants to consume it. And it's not the academic's fault. They don't like it either. But they have to play this game, otherwise they won't get articles published in the best journals for their CV. They won't get tenured. Their career won't evolve. And so the whole system is built around this like really antiquated model that doesn't serve the community at all. With this PSYCH YouTube channel, the goal is to help people think about psychology and apply it to things that are very real in their lives. So I know that when I'm reacting to Sister Wives, you could look at it and go, this is really superficial, you're not adding any value, why are you doing this? And I hope if you listen to my reactions, there is at least 1 or 2 nuggets in each video that teaches you something about psychology. I hope that it's bringing some value in the way of education. So I hope that's helpful. I hope that makes sense. Thank you so much for listening.